Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles. I am bringing you this show from Gavalahori, Crete, and I'm at the home of Anthony and Sonja, our friends from Denver. And by the time you hear this on Friday, we will be making our way back after this 10 days of travel. We booked ourselves, on your advice, I think, Anthony, that business class on Turkish Airlines is a experience not to be missed.
It's not a turkey.
It's not a turkey. They might be serving turkey. It's going to be Christmas time. Yeah. And there'll be beds and something like a bed.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Even with a mattress pad.
A lay flat seat.
A mattress pad?
Yeah.
Oh. It's like the porters when they set up the train for you. Huh?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I won't say I've been spending this whole 10 days looking forward to the flight home, but
it sounds like it, though.
I know.
And you've insisted that we dress as flight attendants.
Yeah, just so to get ready.
A lot.
Try
we can
out.
Do it. No problem. Lynn is Lynn. Deal with it.
My big hope is that we don't get so that we insist on this, that we have to travel business class. It's a little pricey.
I hope you do get convinced.
Yeah. It'll be easy
you
to
can
come.
live through it.
Yeah.
Believe me.
So, well, and we've had a day on Crete. We got in yesterday afternoon, I guess. We flew from Athens. And I think that my first impression, both yesterday and today, is the age of the traces of civilization here. When we walked, probably the most interesting thing yesterday was the building you showed that they built ships there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And was that in the period when Venice was
the Venetian shipbuilding? Yeah, the Venetians controlled Crete, and before the Ottomans.
And then you've got you start with there's sort of native Minoan culture, which is thousands of years before Christ,
Right.
And from there you go
to the Greeks who dominated this area, and then the Romans.
Oh.
And then the Venetians, and then the Ottomans, and then independence.
Independence, and that's what it is. But now it's back to part of Greece or not?
It's part of Greece, yeah. Definitely.
Right. And it's been about 16 years ago that you settled here in the house that we're in, or you started doing it.
Yes.
At that time, were you thinking of all the places in the world that you might set up kind of a satellite place to visit and a second home? How did you end up in Greece and Crete?
We've traveled all over, and we just came to Greece on a vacation once. We really liked it, so we kept coming back and going to different islands and going to different places. And we just really liked it. And then one summer we thought, well, we can't go back to Greece again. We should have more variety. So we went to Spain, and we called it our faux Greece vacation. It was as close as we could get to Greece without going to Greece. And when we were in Spain, we didn't like it, and for various reasons. And while we were there, Anthony says, what are we doing in Spain? We like Greece. We should buy a house there. So... okay.
Yeah.
So then we decided, well, it'd be fun to be on an island, and we wanted to be on a big enough island that you could explore things. Like Santorini, it takes 30 minutes to drive across. Crete takes 5 hours to drive across. So we thought, we'd been to Crete. We liked Crete. So we thought, okay, we'll pick Crete. But at the time, there were no realty companies, no for rent signs, no for sale signs on anything. So we thought, how are we going to do this? So we went to the east coast of Crete. We were in a little village, Ios Nicholas, and we just turned up the street, and there was a sign that said, Traditional Cretan Homes Architect Design Group. So we thought, well, this seems promising. So we went in. It was a Greek architect working with a British woman, and he would build new houses on the top of old ruins of houses, and she was the realtor.
Oh.
And so she showed us around and some places where he could build new houses or houses that existed already. We didn't see anything we liked on the East Coast, so she referred us to somebody on the West Coast, which is where we are. And that person showed us this house.
And then you have that person do the building for you? The original architect, was he the one that created it for you?
No, I mean, this house existed.
Oh,
already.
I see.
Yeah,
He was just the one that pointed you in the right direction.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, so our house is almost 300 years old.
Wow.
So,
And this was in 2003
Yes.
when you first made
Yeah.
it?
We very first started at probably 1999 looking.
yeah.
Oh.
But it took a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had to wait 13 months to get permission from the Minister of Defense of Greece to buy.
Of the whole country?
Yes.
Yes, because we're considered a security risk, Americans, because we didn't have an EU passport.
And Crete is considered a frontline state against Turkey. It's a border state.
Right.
Wow.
So,
And we're really close to like Libya.
So they interviewed the people who sold the house to us.
Yeah.
And
we
they
had
asked
to
us,
write. We had to write essays about who our parents were, what their occupations
Criminal.
were. We had to produce our criminal records,
which we don't have.
which we don't have.
Yeah. No speeding tickets or anything?
No,
or-
so we
Yeah.
produced basically a document saying we had no criminal records.
Off the internet.
They wouldn't take it, so we know they like, ribbons, stamps, and whatever. So we made virtually the same thing.
We printed it on
like-
fancy paper. We got it notarized. It was stamped, and they took it.
That's it. All you need is the right stamp.
That's right. Yeah, so 13 months later, we got a note from our lawyer that said the Minister of Defense has given you approval and you can buy it.
Now, once you bought it, was it an extensive amount of work to get it to the way it is now? Everything looking so nice?
It was quite livable.
Yeah.
In the 1970s kind of way. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, dated, but not falling apart.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
So very livable.
Yeah.
But things like, probably some of the big things were like electrical service to the house was limited. So if you plugged in the coffee maker with the iron, the whole house would go down. So, upgrading the service was important. Things like that.
It was really ugly tile on the floor, so we had the stone put in. The fireplace was huge, big concrete thing. We redid the bathrooms.
People and the people we bought it from left everything, silverware, everything.
These nice bookcases.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
And even
We did have a funny story about they left a whole bunch of furniture, and it was just full of furniture. And so we wanted to get rid of it, but we didn't know anybody at that time. Like, how do you get rid of furniture? So the only person we really knew was the woman who worked at the museum across the alley. And she hardly spoke any English. But we somehow communicated, do you know anybody who would want to buy this furniture? And so she said, I'll try, So like maybe a week later, this little girl comes riding up on a bicycle. She's maybe 10 years old. And she has a little purse. And she opens her purse and takes out this note that she's clearly written. And the note said, "Stay in your house. A man is coming to look at his chairs." So, well, how long do we stay in our house?
Yeah.
So a couple days later, a guy shows up, and he buys all the furniture.
Oh, wow. That's a little mysterious.
Yeah.
They were already his chairs.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So it's given us grand adventures. We've had so much fun figuring things out.
Well, and the thing that, to fast forward to our visit here, which luckily coincided with an event that gathered a lot of the people in the village together. And I think what Darlene and I both noticed is, you have friends, we had dinner with the mayor of the district, and what sort of did a lot of that happen in the last few years after a long period of feeling very much like foreigners, or what kind of trajectory brought you from showing up knowing no one to now actually being sort of part of the community?
Well, I think it's sort of incremental. When you're first here, I think you're checking things out and they're checking you out. And, some people just are here for a few years and they go away, or they're just here to rent for 6 months. And they find out you're here and you're somewhat invested, and you meet neighbors, and it's the usual building trust and friendship and meeting people who connect, and then you build on that. So it's not been very deliberate, because we mostly came here to vacation, and we until we recently retired. We're busy now, but we were like really busy in our jobs, so we didn't really spend much time in the village until pretty recently, because we didn't have any time. So recently, we've expanded it a lot in the last year since we left our jobs, and we're still doing other things, but we have a commitment to help the village move forward. It's so important to have a village where the tavernas, the bakery, and other kind of commercial establishments are going concerns because we've been. If they're not, they're called dead villages, and no one wants to live in a dead village where you can't get a bread in the morning and you can't go for coffee, you can't go for dinner. So we'll spend our time. We want it with an art dimension to it. Spend our time and some money helping the village become more prosperous, not because they need to be rich, but because they need to survive and thrive and become a solid place with all these services, which is what a village needs.
So are there actual villages in this district that you've seen die and they basically go away?
There are villages with they have no store, there are no stores, no bakeries, no nothing, and
just some houses.
Just some houses, and then you have to drive maybe 10 kilometers to get something.
Yeah.
That's really different than the lifestyle. The lifestyle here is we live in the middle of the village and we just go here, walk 3 steps there, and do this and that, talk to people along the way. So when you're in the car and there's no gathering, it's a very different experience. And we don't want that to happen to this village. And right now, like all villages in Greece, it's tough because the economy is difficult. A lot of these little villages have been depopulated over the years because people have moved to the cities for work. So how do you stabilize that? And, we're not looking to grow Gavalahori, but to make it as solid and prosperous as we can so it has a real village life, which we've enjoyed.
At this point, do you have kind of a theory of what it's going to take for it to become one of the villages that survives, that has informed your first initiatives?
Well, I think already it attracts a lot of foreigners, so there are a lot of expats who live in or near Gavalahori. I think what we would be interested in is, and they're great, but we are also interested in the local Greeks. Are there more Greeks who would like to move back to Gavalahori? It's a Greek culture, after all. We don't want just a bunch of Americans and Brits running a little village. So that's important to us, and we've made more of those connections recently, even tonight. So I think part of it is making sure existing living kind of networks continue, economic networks, and building a few more onto it. So whether it's tourism development, we have a number of things people come to look at. How do we make, when the Japanese tour bus comes to town, how do we make sure they have Japanese literature about the village versus nothing? And they just have to look around and do the best they can. And, how do you make that so the tour operator of the cruise ship that lands about 30 kilometers from here goes, that's a village that will look after my Japanese tourists. I'm sending them there.
Right.
And they might have lunch. They might buy a drink. They might buy an ice cream cone. They'll look around. They might go to the museum and spend some money. That's what, how can we help with? So there's the tourism dimension.
If I could jump in here, because our house is right across the alley from the museum, we hear the tourists come down. They usually dump them off to go to the museum. And then we often hear the tour guide say, okay, you have 30 minutes to look around Gavalahori. And so a lot of people start heading down past the church toward the school. Well, there's nothing down there. I want to run after him and say, no. Go this way. There's the olive press from the 15th century. There's Monica's craft shop. You want to go this way. But there's no brochure or anything. So we want to come up with a brochure that says all the things to see in Gavalahori with a little
half
map.
an hour.
Yes. In different languages.
And in different languages.
And maybe the latest version of an acoustic guide kind of thing, too.
Well, where you would be listen to it on your iPhone?
Probably on your iPhone,
That could be an option.
Yeah, so we need to work on it.
You come back and help us with that.
Right, of course. Yeah,
those kinds of things that, again, we're not trying to kill the other villages, but how do we make this, there's some simple things we can do to move it up and create more activity.
Another thing we've thought about is when we started coming to Greece, we really wanted to see what houses looked like inside. And we think it'd be great if we could figure out a way to do some house tours. Some of the real traditional kind of houses. Some of the people who've come to the museum, we've ended up talking to them when we give them tours of our house, and they really like it. And there's some much more traditional houses even than ours. And we think we could find a couple and do house tours, and people would really like to see.
Well, that was a big success in Denver, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. The Doors Open Denver.
Doors Open Denver.
Yeah.
So all those things.
I would think that a challenge of coming in as, outsiders, expats, wanting to help the community that you do is doing it on their terms versus Americanizing it, and I could imagine that you could stumble in a direction forward without even knowing what you hit.
I'm sure we have.
Yeah. But
I think part of it is making as many connections as we can with people, and it's a problem because while we want to be reflective of the community and history and tradition, sometimes they have good ideas, sometimes they don't have very good ideas. Like, there's some things we wouldn't want to help them do because we don't think it's economically viable or it's not going anywhere. But we need to listen and be a part of that and have them be a part of that conversation and deciding. And like the holiday light things we did this year, we did it in a rush because the mayor really wanted to get them up. But we really our plan was always to talk to more people about what they wanted. We would still do lights, but but we did do some, like we have the boat, which is a traditional holiday thing, the boat light. Instead of having like Santa Claus in the square, there's the traditional boat. So we've tried to be sensitive. I think we can be more sensitive, and we try to avoid symbols that really are Western European versus Greek.
And the boat was, the sail was white lights, and it was actually a sailboat made of these lights.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And quite large.
Yeah. And that's a common kind of holiday theme.
In all of Greece, or
in all of Greece, yeah. So to have, like, if we were to sponsor a big Santa Claus, people might like that, but it's not really traditional.
Yeah.
So our kind of tilt is toward, we can do lots of things, but can it have a traditional root? Now, that doesn't mean, like, in the future years, we'd like to have some contemporary light festivals, like Take the School, that's about a quarter block long, and beautiful white stucco building, and have really wild lights, just make it come alive with just
like the
crazy,
Chicago airport.
Exactly, like and that would be very exciting to people. And the locals would like it. And over the longer period, can we do some light things that are actually notable artworks of and not international collectible fame, but it's on that level of, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Well, I can see 5 or 10 years that Gabalahori is the light village of Crete, and I'll say I remember the sailboat. We were here at the first event.
Yeah. And I remember that sailboat. I was worried it wouldn't go on. And that maybe they're either waiting to turn it on to celebrate the start of Christmas, or it doesn't work. But it went on.
It went on with the tree. It was a synchronized lighting. And then we were all surprised because there were fireworks involved.
Yeah, we were like totally surprised by that.
Right.
Yeah, big time fireworks.
Right.
And a nice children's choir that sang some songs. And pretty good sound system, actually.
Yeah,
they
very
had
nice.
4 really big speakers. But you did have the feeling that it had been sort of vaguely planned, and that it was sort of happening like performance art as we watched.
Yeah, because we were told by some people it would start at 5, then 5:30. Then it was announced it will start at 6, and we saw little kids coming to the singing chorale at 10 to 6. So there must have been many times that were advertised.
It was sort of a consensus.
But it's kind of like how does a village put on a celebration, and it's like it's how it works, and you have to be patient and not expect too much. But it was nice, very nice.
Back to your question about kind of negotiating the kind of American versus the Greek thing. So when I was in China last, in Xi'an, where the Terracotta Warriors are, there's this 10-block area that's just totally lighted up, and the most amazing light you've ever seen. And so, I would love to have some of those kind of lights that aren't anywhere near like these, which I think the Greeks have never seen or heard of. And we had to order the lights out of this catalog, in the lighting store in Hanyang. But so, we want to be respectful and.
And still it's kind of stretched.
So like, those lights aren't available here. So we want to see what can we expand somehow and get some other options.
And over the long term, we want to make sure there's some kind of return cash flow. We are happy to support some of these things with writing checks, but that can't go on. I mean, it can go on forever to a degree at a low level, but there's got to be a way of building wealth for the village,
right?
So they can.
You're kind of priming the pump,
exactly,
with your first initiatives.
Yeah, and eventually we think it would be nice to have like craftspeople at the opening of the light thing, and musicians, and
and there may be other people who are willing to, particularly expats, willing to give to like our holiday lighting program. And we didn't have time to really ask them to share the system, but I bet if we asked, a lot of people would write a check and buy a light, or sponsor the electricity for the light during the time period.
Well, and in America, as you know, a lot of these light things, you pay a couple $dollars to drive through it, or a couple $dollars to walk through it, and I mean, eventually it could be that kind of an attraction too.
What kind of reaction did you get from the people tonight, just as a way to gauge if they were kind of neutral or bored or liked what was the verdict?
We thought it was kind of a modest effort, but they seemed to really like it.
Yeah.
Like this one woman came and said, kids here don't ever get to experience anything like you might see Christmas in the city. And here they had a chance now to experience a little bit of that.
Well, and those kids that sang, I mean, that would be.
Yeah.
And I think there were 100 people there.
Probably. Yeah.
And and they had a lot of food. They set up tables, and
I saw that. Yeah.
A lot of traditional little things to eat and drink, and.
And as we mentioned earlier, when we were talking to you, a lot of the political people from the not just here, but from the region came to see it, and I think that's a good sign. They're interested in what's going on, move things forward. And here, like even a few more lights. I mean, it's people don't understand in Greece in the winter. It's dark. It's often rainy, and in a little village that doesn't have a lot of resources, can be drab. Yeah. So. It's lively, and that helps.
Yeah.
And I think for the kids, for the people, it's uplifting. It's not going to turn your life around, but it's something to look forward to or enjoy.
Yeah, it's forward motion, that's for sure.
Well, when we were organizing this, we were talking to a deputy mayor in the mayor's office, and her big project is to collect shoes that she gives to all the poor kids, and every poor child in the county gets a pair of shoes at Christmas, and she organizes all that. But she said, but it's very important to do things psychologically for people too, and uplifting people, just like your lights, is also important.
So she could see how it fit with what she's doing with the body and the spirit.
Right.
I think also here, where it's been so tight financially, not just in Gavahori but around Greece, something new.
Yeah.
They used to have little lights here years ago, and then they all died, or no one could afford to put them up.
Or a village might have one string across.
So to show that there's hope, there's something moving forward, there's something new, is good.
Yeah. Well, when you get invested in more and more here, as in retirement, you'll have the chance to spend time here, but you're also spending time in China and Denver. When you're away from here, do you feel tugged back, or how do you? This is something that's sort of a personal question for me and Darlene, because we, half of the year in Boston with grandchildren and all that, half the year in Denver. We love Denver, and sometimes when my life is really strongly anchored in two different places, there's a little bit of dissonance. And are you feeling any of that yet? And can you imagine how you'll navigate? More time here versus Denver, or how you'll know where you want to be, given that you can be anywhere?
I'd say we haven't totally encountered that yet, in part because we completed our jobs pretty recently in August, and we haven't really reset the table. And I think we'll be involved in many more things in Denver, too, although I think the majority of our philanthropy will be in this area. But I think... we're not there yet. When it's fully developed, like I plan to work on even though the renewal of the Denver Scientific and Cultural Facilities District is about 10 years away, it needs work from now till 10 years to really make it more equitable, make it more sensitive. So I'll be working, and we'll be meeting lots of people through that project. And there'll be some financial needs that we'll support too, but so I think we're not quite there yet, but we kind of compartmentalize. Like when we're in China, we're in China. We're doing the China thing to the max. So we're here, we're doing this to the max. We're in Denver, so it's very compartmentalized. And like anything, I think when you're spending time in different places, there aren't weeks, but there are days when I'm in Denver, I wish I weren't there, I wish I were here. And there are days I'm here, I wish I were someplace else. And I'm sure there are days in China, I wish I were. But, that's just human nature and moods. But I don't recall anything weird, like I really need to close out Greece because I'm going to move to whatever. But I'll tell you, the one thing that has changed is as Sonya's become more active in China, in teaching and lecturing, and her lecture tour coming up, we used to think of, Denver, Greece. Well, now we're kind of split between Denver, China, Greece.
Yeah.
And we're not doing the same level of things as we're doing in Greece, in China. But we have a whole group of friends, and we have a whole network of things, and we travel all around the country, and it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
So we have like 3 worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
But so far they're not conflicting. I think compartmentalization. We also don't have, like you and Darlene have the complication of grandchildren, and we don't have grandchildren. We have no children. And I think that is a legitimate tug that you're going to have as a human being that we just don't have.
Yeah, you're a little more mobile. The decisions sort of, they have a little more clarity.
Yeah.
Boston is privileged by the existence of grandchildren.
Yeah, there's no little 4 or 5-year-old asking us to come home.
That's right.
That's not happening.
Right.
Getting on FaceTime and saying, "When are you coming home?"
Exactly.
I love that, but
Right. Well, and also, we have friends here in Greece who email us regularly.
Oh.
And like when the new plane tree was being planted, Yorgos was taking pictures of them removing the old tree and sending them to
so
us.
you really are kind of
And we even have a friend in Holland who sent a photo of the lights as they went up in Gabelhori that she got from a friend in Gabelhori and sent on to us.
Nice.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
I don't
really
even
kind
think
of
she
a
knew we
network.
were connected to them. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those little networks help,
Yeah.
and I think it'll be fun to dig down here a little deeper. I'm anxious to learn a little more Greek and work with the people here, because it's small. They're earnest people. There's not a lot of resource, so even though we're not going to give them like huge money initially, it can make a really big difference for them, and they've been really good to us. So yeah.
Now, in your China activity, it's not so localized. Is your mission different, kind of helping Americans understand China, or making what sort of the comparable agenda to helping this village in Crete find its way forward? What's
I think it's
the task
you want
there?
to start? Take it.
No.
I think it's more reaching out to individuals who are, in terms, a lot of them are communication, rhetorical theory people. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of like who's sending signals from there, they want to connect with Sonia, or through me a little bit America, because I'm kind of a faculty spouse in that situation. So it's really very individual. It's not
It's
government,
more by subject
whatever.
than by community.
And by individuals. Like there's a man named Dean Mung who's really well known there for agricultural advancement in China, and we know him well. We get along well. He wants to take us to some a whole rural Chinese trip, because he wants to show what he's done, and we just like each other, So it's more human, more personal, and the government there is so impersonal. It's the personal, and here it's personal, but it's very localized. It's hard to think localized when you see these gazillions of people. Like, I can't make a difference in Shanghai today, but I can make a difference in Gabelhori.
And you can make a difference in individual connections that you make in China.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, and those are
Kind of
helpful.
spread out into other opportunities.
And you see people like Sonia as a student who's now teaching in Chicago, a Chinese woman, very successful. You see how...
She was a student of yours in Denver?
In Oregon, actually.
Yeah, Oregon.
A long time ago. And, you see how those connections, and it's not like it's helping people in a natural way. It's like we like them. They're ambitious in a good way. Can we help them a little bit?
Yeah,
and
be a mentor.
and their trade back is they're nice to know.
Yeah.
They're not like we're just like giving. They're like giving back.
Well, the last thing I was thinking of talking about is the first person who helped you here was the guy we met,
Yorgos.
Yorgos.
And we met him, and I mean, I'm always thinking Zorba the Greek whenever I meet anybody here, and he reminded me of this humanity to his face and his warmth, but you met him now 16 years ago, I guess.
Right.
And what have you learned from that friendship with him?
Well, I think one is he's a very kind person who loves the land. He likes agriculture.
He was born here?
Born here,
Yeah.
born next door.
Yeah.
He loves the weather is like, when you're into agriculture, like whether it's raining or how much it's raining, whether it's sunny, that's really important. That's not really our world at all. Mm-hmm. He's a university educated man, but he loves to go to his gardens in the summer. He's got 5 or 6 different ones around here.
So every summer we do a garden tour with him, and he takes us to all his gardens.
Yeah.
And he shows us what he's growing and how it's all doing.
But he's decided to relate to that. He's not looking for a lot of money. It's just really fulfilling to work with.
There's real joy in it.
Yeah, he just loves it. And it's a simple life for him. And he's a complex person, but he's happy doing that, and I think that's an interesting thing. And I think through the years we've become closer to him in different ways, doing different things with them, and enjoying it. We're very different experiences, but it works. My big project coming up that I want to make sure I get on the podcast is we plan to have lights glued to the back of a man who's going to swim in Almerita Bay. And we plan to have a battery pack on his head. And
I think that's a very promising project.
And I just want to make sure I get that on the slide.
Are we going to make sure that the swimmer isn't electrocuted by the lights as he's swimming in the
remember
sea?
that Electric Horseman movie? Maybe it's something like that.
Kind of like that.
Think about yourself like that.
A crowd.
Yeah.
This is a reference to my swim. Where did I have that swim today?
Almerita. Yeah.
Almerita.
Swim on December, what is it? 17th?
Yeah.
No,
18th.
18th? Yeah. He swam in the ocean? Yeah. And
I sort of was boldly saying I'd like to go swimming, and then I knew I was in trouble because I thought, I wonder how cold this water is. Could we just go and I could stick my hand in it and see how cold it is? And your answer was not supportive.
I would say Len was a water weenie. He first said, I look forward to jumping in the water, I'm going to swim. And then later I was like, I'll just put my finger in there. I
wanted a way out.
Joking. So water weenie is
there was no returning, so I had to just boldly stride in. And I was telling myself, I've swum in Maine when it's 60 degrees. I'm sure I can survive this. And maybe it'll only be 30 seconds. But it was a good 10-minute swim I had.
He did well, although we noticed he swam in kind of a corkscrew pattern. And I don't know what that means.
I was a little disoriented. No, that was good. Yeah, I'd be glad to help out with the future light extravaganza.
I do want to say, though, that while you were walking toward the water, we passed 2 people who said, "Oh my God, you're going swimming."
Good. That makes it more satisfying to know that I was a little outside the normal comfort zone. That crazy tourist from Boston.
Right.
And we're headed to Athens tomorrow.
Yep.
We're going to have one of your famous, I won't say notorious, tourists. Darlene calls it extreme tourism when we're with you.
Really?
At the place. Yeah.
Why did she say that?
Well, it's a very positive phrase in her terminology. But when she travels with me, it tends to be, spend 2 hours in this coffee shop and then move to another coffee shop. And she's wanting to see things. Yeah, so you're like heaven to her.
Excellent.
And unfortunately, she's got a cold. She's a little under the weather. But so for our pièce de résistance here in Athens, we're going to see some famous places. Yeah. What kinds of things are we going to see?
Well, I call it a blast around, but go ahead.
Blast around.
We're going to start out going to the Agora,
which is
it's the old center of ancient Athens. So every Greek village or town had one. It's the gathering place, the marketplace, a sacred space. It's where all the political institutions were. Yeah. And we're going to go with a man named Steve Diamond, archaeologist, American archaeologist. But he married a Greek woman, and he's lived in Greece for like 30,
and she's also an
40
archaeologist.
years. She's also an archaeologist. And he just does the most amazing job explaining in really kind of comprehensive and comprehensible terms like what went on there. And then we'll have lunch with him, and then we'll go to the Acropolis. And then if we have some time, we want to take you to Aristotle's Lyceum, where Aristotle lectured. Yeah. They just just a few years ago, found it, and they started excavating it. They've made it into this really nice park, but the excavation is still going on. And that's really close to the Bernacchi Museum, which we really like, and it's got a great gift shop.
Oh, good. Wow. And then we stay at the Sofitel.
You stay,
Yes.
we'll go to dinner at the new hotel on the roof of the new hotel, which is kind of a fun place to go. I hate to spoil it for Len, but for the listeners, the vast audience, is it 20,000 or 1,000,000? I can't remember how many listen to this. Could you
it's
clarify?
probably only 1,000.
All right, well, but what's really cool about that hotel is that it was built in the 60s initially, and it had very traditional kind of 60s level furniture, not modern, but kind of traditional furniture built. Well, they got rid of all that, but they just broke it all up, and the walls in the lower level are covered with kind of an assemblage of arms and of chairs and furniture. Of the furniture. It's really neat.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a fun hotel, and it's a great restaurant, and you have a view of the Parliament and other things there. So we'll go there for dinner, and then see you off either in the cab or take the metro out to the Sofitel, which is like just across the street from the airport, which is great. Perfect. When you have an early flight, you just get up and walk across.
I think our flight's at 9 a.m. or something.
So
easy. Too crazy early.
And
then an 11-hour flight back to Boston from Istanbul.
Yeah, that should be fun. And you'll tell us
you
how
just go direct?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, we like Turkish has been good. We haven't flown them for a couple of years, but used to fly them a lot at different times. Yeah. And you'll like it. If you don't like it, we're not refunding the money.
Yes, I'll know where to come. I'm going to talk to the mayor of your district here.
Super.
Well, thanks to you both, and it's a pleasure to be here, and now it's a pleasure to have a little memory of it on the show. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming. We've enjoyed having you and Darla here. It's been fun. Come back.
That was our friends Anthony Radich and Sonja Foss, who are friends from Denver, who, as you heard, have set up a really intriguing presence on in this tiny village in the island of Crete, and we enjoyed our stay with them. After I recorded that conversation at their house on Crete, they took us to Athens, and we spent the day touring we had a great guide who was a friend of Sonja's, who studied Greece. I think he's moved to Greece from the U.S. about 30 years ago, and so we got a real insider's view of everything that happened at the Agora, which is below the Acropolis, and this was kind of common space where a lot of notable things happened 5 centuries before Christ in the heyday of democracy and in the city where democracy was kind of invented. And then we took the metro out to the airport in Athens, and early this morning headed over to Turkish Airlines to fly to Istanbul. I'm recreating this from my desk here at home in Cambridge as if I'm remembering a story somebody told me, but we ended up at Istanbul. It's a huge modern airport, really impressive, and got to the gate where we took our flight from Istanbul direct to Boston. I thought it was going to be 11 hours. It turned out to be 9 hours, so we got in about an hour early. We got in about 6 p.m. here tonight and took Uber home. And after a trip like that has been to so many different places, Malta and Germany for the wedding, and Crete and Athens, you walk into your home and it's like, obviously, you recognize it. Nothing has changed, but somehow you see it with fresh eyes. Is this the place that we are staying tonight because we got a room at Airbnb, and what's going to be happening tomorrow here in this place? It's a part of the world just like the places we visited, but it's the part of the world that we live in. And after spending 10 days traveling in far and wide, it's that feeling of coming home is I like it. To me, that's the big payoff of travel, is what you bring home in terms of your view of the world and what everything looks like. I want to get this up tonight. It is Friday, I think. It's about 2 a.m. in Athens and Istanbul. So I'm just knowing that if it's Friday, I'm putting the show up, and I'm going to put it up for you. I had a little trouble putting up that show in Malta, trying to do it all with the iPhone, and I hope that some of you didn't have trouble. I did hear from someone who said that it didn't show up in the right format. It was difficult to listen to. So I think my experiment of putting a show on the road strictly with the iPhone, at the least I'm going to have to go through that and do a little better job on the mechanics of it. But that's why I wanted to put this up from my regular computer set up here at my desk. That's it. Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles from Cambridge, Massachusetts in the USA. Thanks for listening.